Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
Walmart Plus members save on meeting up with friends. Save on having them over for dinner with free delivery with no hidden fees or markups. That's groceries, plus napkins, plus that vegetable chopper to make things a bit easier. Plus, members save on gas to go meet them in their neck of the woods. Plus, when you're ready for the ultimate sign of friendship, start a show together with your included Paramount Plus subscription. Walmart Plus members save on this plus so much more. Start a 30-day free trial at walmartplus.com. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. See Walmart Plus terms and conditions.
You are tuned into The Library with Tim Einenkel, rapstation.com.
We're JJ Fat and we're here to rock. Rhymes like ours could never be stopped. See, it's three of us and I know we're fresh. Party rockers, non-stoppers, and our names are deaf. See, the J is for just, the other for jamming, the F is for fresh, A-N-D.
Getting a person to tell you what 3 things they're passionate is pretty easy. My next guest on The Library with Tim Einenkel has taken on the very challenging task of taking his 3 major passions and combining them into one big and glorious passion. He describes himself as a visual artist, graphic designer, music lover. He's Andrew Katz, and I want to thank him for joining me on The Library with Tim Einenkel on rapstation.com. Andrew, thanks you so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks, Tim. This is a great, great honor to be a part of this. Just knowing who you've already interviewed and who's already come through the library, it's amazing that I would be a part of that. So thanks.
Thank you. No, thank you. So I want to start out with you did an interview with slamjams.com, and you talked about the rock artists that you grew up listening to. You talked about the Beatles, the Talking Heads, U2, etc. And then you were introduced to through your neighborhood in school. And then when you left your neighborhood, you kind of realized there was other genres of music out there. And you talk about this you were at a party and there's a homemade mixtape that was left by a DJ. And you heard, EPMD, JJ Fad, Kool Moe Dee, Dougie Fresh, and all those heads. And then you said you were instantly hooked. What made you instantly hook?
That's a great question. Well, because my upbringing was pretty, I don't know, the word I used was sort of homogeneous, where there was just one kind of person in my neighborhood. I think this idea that music had kind of found its way into my own house. I mean, it was my house where that tape was left, in my basement where I grew up. And this tape that had all these songs on it, it was like sort of this Rosetta Stone in a way. It was like this other language for me. And the beats and the sounds were instantly appealing. But then it was like, all right, I want to understand what they're talking about. I want to understand where they're talking about. I want to understand all of these different words, these ways of saying things I mean, you can tell just by talking with me, I don't have that cool factor, And so when they were talking about certain things, I just always remember Kool Moe Dee's Wild Wild West from that tape that you're talking about. Right. And he's talking about his neighborhood and what was happening in his neighborhood and how, the girlies rubbing up in the park and all that. And I was just like, I was young enough to just be in awe of it. And it was not long after my own father had passed away, and I had this sort of need to look to other people for some kind of, not guidance, but hey, what's next? And what am I going to, what's going to be inspiring to me? And so it sort of fell into my lap in the best possible way. And I was able to use that as a launching pad or a springboard to find other music and to find other people that like that kind of music, that they could expose me to more, I could expose them to more. And it was a time where that's changed a lot in the last several years. I mean, it's so easy to get music that you've even just heard a snippet of. Right. But back then, you needed to know a few lyrics and a few names to tell the story and to get someone to know who you were talking about. And I really just used it as this, like, all right, now how am I going to get to the next thing? What else am I going to listen to? And then like I said in that article, it wasn't long after that hip hop just burst into the suburban community through LL Cool J and the Beastie Boys. And at first, I was a little overwhelmed by it. I thought, because with it came, sort of started dictating who you hung around with and who your friends were, and in a way that it happens in high school, for better or worse. And I was listening to this music, but I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be, or if my friends were going to think it was okay, or if hey, maybe there's some new friends that I can get because I listen to the same music they do. And that's kind of how it started to happen, was that the people I wanted to hang out with wanted to listen to that music and wanted to be a part of that world and discuss who was good and who was upcoming and who was going to be coming out next.
When did the love of this music for you transition into... I mean, I guess, like, was there a moment where you were like, I'm going to try to be a rapper, or, and then that might have not worked out. And then you're like, well, I want to show an appreciation. I want to, not just appreciation for the art, but I also want to express myself through the art. When did that happen where you started making these incredible portraits of all these guys, all these MCs? I'm so blown away by all your work. And I just love looking at everything you post on Facebook and everything you post on Twitter and all your artwork. When did that happen for you?
Well, thanks, first of all. That's an awesome compliment. I guess it was a little bit of a slow burn as far as hip-hop and art coming together. But I absolutely remember the exact moment when when I realized that all of this could work hand in hand. I had always done portraits of my favorite athletes. So I'm a big baseball fan, and I would bring my portraits to Cooperstown each year and try to meet some of my childhood heroes. And because there's an overlap between sports and hip hop, some of my favorite lines in hip hop are where there's pop culture references, whether it's an athlete or a game or a sport. Or a comparison between someone who has great flow and maybe a basketball player. There's just this natural overlap. So I was drawn to the lyrics first, and I think of certain lyrics in particular that cross over genres. I think of "Bring the Noise" from Public Enemy, where Chuck mentions not only Eric B. and LL, but he also mentions Anthrax. So there's this natural thing where it kind of busts out of its own genre, and so that happened with sports too. And after doing the sports art for a long time and meeting some of my favorite players, I was actually in line to meet Rod Carew at an autograph signing. Oh, wow. And I had this painting of Rod Carew, who I always liked because he was a slap hitter and he kind of did his own thing. If you ever saw him up there, it looked like he had this non-traditional stance, and it seemed like he could just place the ball wherever he wanted it. Well, after I had been exposed to the Beastie Boys for a while, they had the song Sure Shot. Mm-hmm. And when they mentioned Rod Carew, I just lit up. I thought that was the coolest thing. I've got mad hits like I was Rod Carew.
Right.
So there I am. I was in Baltimore trying to meet Rod Carew. And I was in line, and it sort of dawned on me, wouldn't it be cool to have a conversation with Rod Carew about being called out and mentioned in the Beastie Boys song? And the more I thought about it, and I was in a pretty long line to meet him, I thought, wouldn't it be really cool is if he sort of blessed the painting with those lyrics by the Beastie Boys. Wow. And I thought, this is going to either be him, kind of saying, get out of here. I'm not going to do that. I don't know what you're talking about. Or it's going to be the coolest thing that I've ever done. And it ended up being the coolest thing because I mentioned it to him. I said, hey, would you? And I thought about it. I said, I shouldn't ask him to write, I've got mad hits like I was Rod Carew, because he is Rod Carew. So I asked him to write, I've got mad hits. So I wrote it on a little piece of paper, and I handed it to him. I said, would you inscribe this, I've got mad hits, Rod Carew? And he kind of smiled and he said, oh, you too? Because I just had a guy ask me to sign an album for him. And I said, all right, he gets it. He understands. But I remember, to answer your question, I thanked him. I shook his hand. I was thrilled. And I went over to sort of take a picture of the painting with the new autograph on it. And it hit me. I said, oh, my gosh, you know what? I'm onto something here. This feels right on so many levels. How else can this manifest itself? How else can I make this part of the art? And that's really how I see it now. I make a piece of art, and I don't feel like it's done until I get it in front of the subject. I don't feel like it's done until the person who is in the painting sees it and comments on it, or there's an experience attached to it. And that's what I've been doing the last, 2 or 3 years now, is every time I finish something, I'm like, or actually almost in reverse, I'll look and see who's coming next. Oh, wow. And, someone coming through D.C. or Maryland or Baltimore, and I'll say, all right, that's my homework assignment. I'm going to, like right now I'm working on speech from Arrested Development, because Arrested Development is playing the Howard Theater soon. And what's even better is I can throw it out there on social media, and I can say, this is what I'm doing. And it's been really fun to put the different pieces, the different steps of the process out there. And usually by the time I go to the show, the subject has seen the work. So it's not a total surprise that I'm going to show up with artwork. But yeah, that moment in Baltimore when I met Rod Carew and he signed. In fact, I went home that day and I said, you know what? I have to get the Beastie Boys to sign this piece too. And my wife was like, that's nuts. Well, how are you going to have that happen? And I said, well, I heard that Mike D's going to be DJing up in Brooklyn in Williamsburg. I'm going to drive up there. And she said, well, that's 3 hours away. And I said, yeah, this sounds really good to me. I said, that's only 3 hours. Like, I can do that, and I can be back all in the same day. No sweat. And so that's more or less what happened. I was able to go up to Brooklyn, found a dot on a map and met Mike D. And not only that, I happened to, at the very same time, meet some people that have been really important in my life, the people who organize and run MCA Day in honor of Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys. So the MCA Day connection started, from the Rod Carew, Mike D experience. And and that's what's been really amazing about this whole, whatever you call what I'm doing, is it's kind of driven itself. Like once I do one thing, it seems to lead to something else. It leads to, talking to you, having a podcast, having an experience to talk about my art in this medium. That's how I met Chuck, that's how I met Cypress Hill and Slick Rick. It's the stories one after the other they're not the same, but a lot of times the way it happened is the same. I made a piece of art which emboldens me to go up to people who I would really not go up to otherwise. I said, what would I have to say? What reason would I have to talk to them? And so all of a sudden I have this piece that is the bridge, and I use it, and I feel much more confident when I have artwork than if I were to be empty-handed.
You talked about social media and throwing up a piece on social media, and then you've said, quote, achieving a strong likeness is paramount, especially when attempting to make a portrait of someone famous. This might be my favorite part of the challenge. For this reason, I often share my step-by-step process on social media. So for you, but prior to social media, who or what was your sounding board? How did you know, besides the meeting of the subject, how did you know that this piece was ready to be presented? Well,
to be honest, the hip-hop part of this didn't come before social media for me. In fact, I think I was kind of late to the game when it came to Twitter. I didn't understand it. I didn't see how I would use it. And then when I figured it out and I realized, I can take a picture of what I've made and send it directly to the person who's in the picture, and they can decide to ignore it or comment on it or even retweet it. I thought that was such a powerful way to get things out there and to get feedback. And as an artist, and I'm sure audio artists, hip hop artists, or singers, or songwriters, or musicians thrive on some kind of feedback, good, bad, or otherwise. They need to have a critique of their work.
Right.
I found that Twitter was this incredible universal way to get feedback, and sometimes you have to be ready for comments that aren't very complimentary. But right. I was ready for that. At least I thought I was, and I. But to answer your question, I guess I didn't have a way, and I hadn't done the hip hop thing visually until it clicked. And by the time it clicked, I was already connected to certainly Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and those are the things now that are just a part of the process. So I guess the answer would be there wasn't a sounding board. My family, my close friends. I had a few one-man shows locally in Maryland where I live, but that was even before that I did a lot of any of the hip-hop stuff. A lot of my sports art or athlete portraits were there, but I guess what I would do back then was bring it to a game. I'd bring the artwork to a game and try the same thing. So in a lot of ways, my MO is the same, where the hard copy, the actual piece of art, I'll bring into a public spot, to an arena or to a show, and try my luck that way. And fortunately for me, I've met a lot of really amazing people who have given me a leg up. In fact, the funny story about meeting Chuck D was I was brand new to Twitter at the time, and I had made a portrait of him in the hopes, because I had a chance to see them. It would have been my second time seeing them. They were doing the Hip Hop Gods tour. And when I first got on Twitter, all I knew, I was like, all right, I'm just going to tweet about the Hip Hop Gods tour. I said, Public Enemy's coming to DC, 930 Club. I'm going to be there. I kept saying it. And then I realized, hey, I could do lyrics. And lyrics that's my favorite thing. It's one thing to get an autograph on something, but if one of my favorite hip hop artists of all time is going to write lyrics on my artwork, then I feel like that's the best. That's total approval on their part, And so I remember I was tweeting out lyrics, and I've just been a really big Public Enemy fan for a long time, and a Chuck D fan for a long time. And it was one of my goals was to meet him. And I told my wife that at some point early in our relationship, I said, I really want to meet Chuck D one day. And she's like, well, why? And I said, well, I just think his convictions are amazing. He believes in what he says. He believes in empowering others. He's all about making things better, even if it's a tough conversation. I said, and I think there's not enough of that, frankly. And so, it was at the Beastie Boys got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2012. And I was in the audience in Cleveland, Ohio for that. Oh, wow. And when I found out that Chuck and LL Cool J were going to induct them, I lost my mind. I thought that would be amazing. So it was later that year, I was on Twitter, and I was putting all these PE lyrics out there next to the charcoal drawing I had done of Chuck. It's actually still and yet, and it's always been on my Twitter. That's my avatar, is the drawing of Chuck. And my phone vibrated, and it said it was from Chuck, and it said, "Hey, bro, DM me." And this is how naive I was. I was like, "What does that mean? What is DM?" So I said, "I guess that means some kind of personal message, direct message." Yeah, I figured it out. And then I was like, "Oh shit! Like, what if it's a cease and desist? Like, stop quoting me and stop putting my lyrics out there." Like, and I actually had that thought. And I, pulled myself together a little bit, and I said, "Hey, what's up? What can I do for you?" And he said, "Oh, you're going to come to the show in November, right?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I've been telling everybody about it." And he's like, "Okay, well, I'd like to discuss something with you, like some kind of business thing." And I flipped out. I mean, that's crazy. And so what I love about Chuck is that he's such a he sees, I think, the best of people.
Right.
He can find what people are good at and then empower them to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen him do it not just for me, but for other artists and other people. Whether it's giving someone a job or just giving them some advice or a leg up, and it's very authentic. It's not lip service. It's this. Okay, I see that you have a passion. I see that you care about this. How can we make this work? And that's what he did for me. And I wasn't even asking. It was just this. I guess he could tell that I loved what I was doing and I loved what he was doing, and he made sure that there was some kind of a relationship there, a meaningful relationship that could be turned into other good things.
You talk about lyrics, and I look at the hip hop artist canvases that you've done, and I was wondering, kind of really quickly, what lyrics come to mind if I would name a few. So we start with Rakim.
Rakim, to me, the microphone fiend line. Although when I did, he recently signed a piece of mine, and he did the after 12, I'm worse than a gremlin. Feed me hip hop, and I start trembling. That's a great one. But I think my favorite one by Rakim is cool because I don't get upset. I kick a hole in the speaker, pull the plug, then I jet. I mean that's just. That's quintessential hip hop. It doesn't get any better than that. But he's got, he's got a lot of really, really great ones. The one that always comes to mind, it's kind of a long one, and I'll butcher it, but it's the one that Q-Tip brought up in The Art of Rap, which is the 7 MCs that put him in a line. Yeah. That line. From My Melody is a great one as well. To me, he's great because he enunciates so well. You hear everything, and he never makes a mistake. It doesn't seem like he ever makes a mistake. No. And I remember about a year ago, 2 years ago, Chuck actually threw out on line. He's like, "Man, everybody check this out!" And it was like this Live at Soho album that Rakim had put out. And Chuck was like, it's like a jazz record, he just doesn't make any mistakes. And it's just clear and great. And he was right. And that's another thing I love about all this genre is that at least how it used to be, I know there was always people beefing with one another and there was always these sort of arguments and things. But I also love when in songs and in lyrics, people give each other props. I think that's the coolest thing. And I think that's why I always loved the PE line with Eric B. and LL and Anthrax. I think that's great.
All right, next artist, Black Thought.
Well, I have to say the one that he signed on the piece that I just saw him about a month ago actually it was in Maryland. And I usually write down what I want them to sign, just to make it real easy for them to say yes. Right. Because, some of them are like in a hurry or some of them are like, nah, I can't think of one right now, which they would never want to say. But I always go, all right, sometimes I'll even ask publicly my friends, I'll say, all right, what do you think I should have on here? And he wrote, I'm the Elephant in the Room, a collision of the sun and the moon, which is from a Static Selecta song that he did with Joey Badass as well. Right. And so what was really cool about that was I had something in my pocket and I had lyrics for him to write. And he's like, no. And he looked up and sort of stared at the ceiling for a second because he really thought about it. And then he just wrote it out, and which makes it, it's instantly my favorite now. It makes all the difference because if they're committed to it and they're being thoughtful about it, then forget about it. It's so much more meaningful than me just pulling one of my favorite lyrics out. Even though everybody has favorite lyrics by everybody, it's cool when they kind of commit to one.
That's cool. Common.
I didn't get a chance to get him to write lyrics on mine, but the song Rewind, where he talks about Jay Dilla. One of the reasons I was able to even get close to Common was in D.C. they have the D.C. Loves Dilla concert every July, and that's afforded me an opportunity to see some really, really incredible artists. De La Soul did it one year, Common did it last year, and then there's a lot of other names that come through there, and Pharoah Monch was there. So it's been great. But I think the one where he talks about his eyes welling up and how this is for my man James DeWitt Yancey. And this one goes out to James DeWitt Yancey, and then he mentions the family and rhymes that with. So he's more like, to me, he's more like a poet, like a spoken word poet. The way that he rhymes, it's very different, very unique.
And of course, I have to ask you, what about one of my favorite artists, Slick Rick?
Slick Rick. Well, hopefully it's not too cliche to say la-di-da-di, but I just think as many times as that's been sampled and I've heard so many different, I mean, for good and bad, there's been some bad samples of that and some that were like way too poppy for me that weren't even in hip hop anymore. But I just think that it's quintessential. I also, my brother and my brother really likes Children's Story, which is, him running through the grass and all of that. And I would probably say, well, also, he's great on the show with Dougie Fresh.
Right.
That's just great. The whole Michelle tribute from the Beatles, and then I just like when they go back and forth. I don't know, they're late. Told them the time. Oh, I forgot the date. That kind of, love that too. So, I mean, Slick Rick's got a lot. In fact, he's coming around. He'll be in D.C. on the next week. On the 20th. So hopefully I'll get a chance to catch that again. I've done 2 drawings of him. He has one, and then the other one I have. And he wrote Lottie Dottie on one of them, which was cool. So there's a lot of good ones from Slick Rick for sure.
When you're creating these pieces, are you playing the music of each of the artists that you're playing, or is it like, or are you inspired at different times? So it's like you might not have the CD or the MP3 at the time to actually put them on, or does it help when you actually have the music of the artist playing?
Yes, yes and yes. Like I can't say I exclusively, like sometimes a piece will be, take 25 or 30 hours. So I'm not going to listen to them. I mean, I'll watch TV, I'll listen to audiobooks, I'll listen to music. But what I would love to do is when I'm working on a piece, when I'm not working on the piece, if I'm in the car, like I kind of immerse myself in their music. I remember that happened with Cypress Hill a lot too, because while I don't want to say that I know everybody's lyrics and everybody's songs, but one of the things that I love about going through the process of making a tribute to any of these artists is that I do try to immerse myself for that week or two in their catalog, so that if I do get in front of them and I do get a chance to talk to them, that I have some kind of a feeling of their whole vibe, and it's not just, oh, I know their popular song. I do try to make an attempt to learn about them and I think that's the other thing about all these great podcasts that are out there, is that you do get these really wonderful interviews with these artists, and as a result, you can feel more and more connected to them. I feel like it's a much more personal. Although you're not sitting in the same room with them, it feels like you are. If you're listening to it in the car or walking the dog, you feel like you're at that table listening to them share how they were inspired. So yes, I absolutely listen to all of their music. I try my best to be fluent in their catalog. It's tough, but I mean, and one example I would say is common for me is somebody who I know a couple of songs, and I always really like his music, but I'm not as familiar with his lyrics as I might be somebody like Public Enemy, who I feel like I studied when I grew up. That I wanted to know all the words. I wanted to know what they were talking about and why they were angry or why they were bringing this point up. And so to me, it's an education. The music and that's why I like the music I like. I think is that it's telling a story, or it's painting a picture with words and sounds, and that's why I'm drawn to it in the first place. And so I want to make sure I understand it. If I'm going to go so far as to draw somebody or paint somebody, I want to make sure I understand as best I can what their point is.
Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
Walmart Plus members save on meeting up with friends. Save on having them over for dinner with free delivery with no hidden fees or markups. That's groceries plus napkins plus that vegetable chopper to make things a bit easier. Plus, members save on gas to go meet them in their neck of the woods. Plus, when you're ready for the ultimate sign of friendship, start a show together with your included Paramount Plus subscription. Walmart Plus members save on this plus so much more. Start a 30-day free trial at walmartplus.com. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. See Walmart Plus terms and conditions.